Are you ready for more love and depression? We're going to talk about Caleb's fallen cosmos myth. As always, whenever I talk about the myths, I always have to disclose, just in case new players are watching, the main story in this game are distinct and separate from the myths. As clarified in the game, other love interests do not exist within the context of a specific myth. Each myth is its own contained narrative, allowing for a focused story unique to that specific love interest. As always, feel free to have a discussion down in the comments. I will join you because I read every single one. This video is going to cover the fallen cosmos myth and how it ties to Caleb's character as a whole. Another thing before I start, I just want to mention that I've played this game in both English and Chinese, and I gotta say, the context of him being her gege or her brother really matters. Playing the game in Chinese and understanding that context really matters, and it hits you in a completely different way. While the English version hurts, the OG just hit different. It really does. And before I get attacked by the super fans, I just want to say that I genuinely love the emotional depth the English voice actor brought to this myth. He did such an incredible job, and none of what I'm saying is meant to discredit his performance at all. And I am not saying that the English translation is bad. This is just me sharing my perspective as someone who speaks Chinese, because sometimes localization shifts the emotional tone of a character in ways that are not always easy to translate. But hey, if you don't agree with me, that's okay. I'm not telling you how to think, I'm just simply sharing my perspective. So in the English version, as we all know, Caleb refers to himself as MC's childhood friend, or just friend in the case of this myth. But in the Chinese version, he actually calls himself your gege. So that literally means older brother. But culturally, it doesn't only mean your biological brother. In Chinese, gege can also be a term of closeness. It's used to describe someone older than you who cares for you, looks out for you, or you can just use that term out of respect for someone who's just older than you. Just to give you a personal example, because I know some people might still feel weird about it because of the literal translation, my mom calls my dad by his name plus ge at the end. So his name is Liang, so she calls him Liang Ge. We speak Hakka, so that's a Chinese dialect where gege turns into koko, but you get what I mean. It's a term of affection, not blood. It's emotionally intimate, familiar, and the word gege matters so much because it shows how he sees himself in MC's life. Not just as someone she grew up with, but as someone who chose to protect her. That one word adds a whole new emotional layer to his character. It's not just a tragic love story anymore. It becomes a story about duty, about care, about someone who sees himself as her shield. And when you carry that context into what happens in this myth, it hits way harder. I will try my best to point out some of the differences between the English version and the Chinese version in this video. Not everything though, because the video will get too long, but I just hope that this video will give you a different perspective on this myth from someone who understands the cultural context behind the original language. Alright, let's get started. So this myth takes place in a version of Philos where immortality has been achieved, but this great civilization has met its inevitable decay, except for the capital and the surrounding region. This prosperous city that was once great is now in ruins, with rebel leaders trying to take down the corrupt government. And this falling regime could only cling to life by relying on the secret weapon that crushed these rebels, these countless uprisings, a modified combat android A01. That is RMC. She is an android who has been modified over and over again, and they're using her to fight against these rebels. And every time she comes back from being destroyed, they would remove her memories over and over again. And the one who helped her recover her system is X02. Caleb. Both of them grew up in a lab, heavily modified and experimented on, designed to be the perfect weapon for destruction. I really like how they foreshadowed this myth on Caleb's trailer. Remember this? In the first chapter, we get a glimpse of how they were like when they were still kids in the lab, and they were planning for an escape. We get to witness their first meeting inside this lab. Now, immediately, there is a difference between the Chinese and English translation. In the English version, he greets her and just mentions his code name, X02. In Chinese, he says,
我是 X02, 你的哥哥.
So this means I'm X02, I'm your gege. He calls himself her older brother, already taking on that protector role right from their first meeting. And there is a reason for that. I'll explain more as we go. So, they escape, and once they're outside, MC does not remember anything beyond the lab. Her memories have been erased over and over again, and it's here that we see MC learning, really experiencing the world for the very first time. It's her first time feeling the seasons, it's her first time under the sweltering heat of summer, and her first time expressing that she wants something. She wants to taste a fruit Caleb describes as silver glow fruit. and it's in this moment that she names him. But they were caught soon after and brought back to the lab, and that's where we get to see their energy signatures. Destructio and
Construo.
So let's unpack all of these first. His name, silver glow fruit, and their energy signatures. When they're finally outside, when MC's feeling the sun for the first time, breathing in a world that isn't sterile white walls, she names him. So in the English version, she says, calming, encouraging, bright, Caleb. Almost like she's listing traits, like trying to describe the feeling he gives her, then finding a name that kind of fits that vibe. But in the original Chinese version, she doesn't explain anything. She just says his name, 下一周, and that says everything. This character means summer, that burning, alive, overflowing kind of season. And these two characters can be translated as by daylight or like daytime. So his name is literally like calling him the brightness of summer. It's warmth, it's light, like the breath of fresh air you take when you feel like you're finally free. To me, his name sounds like a name born from emotion, and that matches the context of MC naming him in a moment of emotional awakening. So instead of spelling it out, the Chinese version just lets you feel it. She names him not by logic or traits, but by how he made her feel in that exact moment. It's like a poetic expression of what summer feels like. Light, warmth, and the kind of daylight that never ends. And that's exactly what he is to her. Her summer, her light. And let's tie that name to the fruit that he mentioned, the silver glow fruit. The rough translation of the description of this fruit, this kind of fruit has a silver glow, and even its core gives off light. There's no official name for this fruit, he doesn't say what it's called, but based on what it looks like in his 4-star card, it clearly resembles an apple. And in his overall lore, we see so much apple imagery tied to him. His trailer, his cards, everywhere. The fruit in this myth doesn't offer mystical knowledge or anything. It's more like a hidden symbolism. In this myth, when he describes that fruit to her, he gives her that first taste of desire, of wanting something that she has not had the chance to experience before. And later, when they plan to escape and find their perfect paradise, their home, it becomes really clear that he's taking the role of Eve. His name, Xia. This first character is the same character used in Xiaowa, Eve, in the Chinese Bible. That is clearly intentional. And when you look at their roles in this myth, it becomes even more symbolic. MC A01 is the original subject, the first creation, Adam. Then comes Caleb, X02, Eve, is the one created from Adam, and the one who awakens desire, emotion, rebellion. That's why Caleb constantly says,
our bodies, minds, and spirits are from the same source.
And just like Eve, he's the one who brings awareness, the one who reaches out and says, there's more to life than this, the one who tempts her, not with malice, but with love, with a choice, with the possibility of something beyond the cage that we're born into. This art was officially commissioned by Infold, by the way. Look at how he's offering her the forbidden fruit. The symbolism here is not even subtle. And I want to highlight this moment here in the field before they were caught. So when MC asks him, why do you want me to have a place I want to visit? In English, he says,
it's because I'm your friend. My job is to take you to the places you want to visit.
But in Chinese, he says,
因为我是哥哥，哥哥就是要带妹妹去他想去的所有地方。
and this means because I'm your brother, and it's Gege's responsibility to take his Mei, his little sister, wherever she wants to go. And that just fucking broke me, because he's just a kid. He's just like her. He's not stronger or that much older than her, not really, and they're both trapped, experimented on, completely powerless in the grand scheme of things. And yet, he still chooses to be her protector. He takes on that responsibility like it's something sacred, like it's the one thing he can control in a world where everything has been taken from them. It hurts because no child should have to carry that burden. And after they're caught and brought back to the lab, MC is forced to go through it all over again. They wipe her memories, send her out to destroy, and repeat. She has no say. I feel so bad for MC in this myth. Like, she went through hell. Can you imagine the trauma that she's accumulated throughout the years? MC's next encounter with Caleb happens a few years later. They've both grown up. The rebels, the same ones MC has been killing on the government's behalf, are now attacking the facility, looking for her. Amid the chaos, Caleb manages to break into her chamber. He takes the opportunity to sneak in and help her escape. She doesn't remember him at first, but slowly, bits and pieces started coming back. And this time, Caleb makes a promise.
This is our last escape. We either succeed or die. Being captured isn't an option.
Either we succeed or we die. Very subtle foreshadowing there. And so they escaped with Caleb's aircraft. And after they fight off the people chasing them, MC's mechanical body is severely damaged. This is where we get to witness Caleb preparing her for the first time when she's fully conscious. And this is where their energy signatures finally make sense. Destructio and
Construo.
Creation and destruction. These aren't just opposing forces. They're one of the oldest dualities in myth, philosophy, and art. They're often not seen as opposites, but as complementary forces, two sides of the same cosmic cycle, intertwined, interdependent. You'll see this reflected everywhere across cultures. If MC, A01 is Destructio, then Caleb becomes the one who gives her life. And this isn't just physically as well, but emotionally. He's the one who pulls her back from the edge, who offers her more than just survival. He offers her a future, a feeling, a self. But the unfortunate nature of their energy signature is as one pours energy into the other one becomes weaker. And his decline means that the Destructio energy is getting stronger. And when Destructio energy grows unchecked, it destroys the vessel containing it. Throughout the chapters of this myth, we get to see these observation logs from the lab. So these observation logs are the modifications that they have been doing to Caleb and MC after their first escape to make sure they don't escape again, tampering with their energy signatures. Determine the nature and interrelation of A01 and X02's powers. They were analyzing the nature of their connections. The lab wasn't just testing their powers individually, they were specifically interested in how the two interact, how their bond functions, how it evolves under emotional or environmental stimuli. Research and design preventative measures to stop the energy fusion between A01 and X02. They implanted failsafes to prevent their escape. These preventative measures were not just about energy, they were about ensuring they could never run away again. Initiate quantum interference when X02's and A01's energy fluctuations maintain synchronization. They installed quantum interference modules. These modules were designed to punish closeness. If they ever stayed emotionally or energetically aligned for too long, the system would intervene. They feared what they couldn't control. They were not just afraid of their power, they were afraid of their potential, of what could happen if they ever stop holding back. But these two were not aware of these modifications that were done to them until it was already too late. One thing I really like about this myth is how the writers show us how MC slowly gained her humanity. She starts to discover what she likes: sweet fruits, complex flavors like tartness and bitterness. She smiles for the first time. She starts to define what happiness means for her. And for her, that happiness is Caleb. He is the only constant, the only safe place outside of that lab. They are literally the center of each other's worlds. They don't have anyone else. They never did. Okay, so this isn't spelled out in the main story yet, but Caleb's anecdote really hints at it. But if they both went through the same kind of torments as children in the main story, being experimented on, restrained, observed, if Caleb had to watch MC suffer over and over again, then it puts everything into perspective. The way he clings to her, the desperation, the madness, the longing. It's not just dramatic or intense for the sake of it, it's grief, it's trauma, and it's mutual. So when you see how unhinged they are about each other in this myth and in his standard myth as well, how they refuse to let each other go, how they want a world where it's just the two of them, it's not dramatic. It's the only kind of love they've ever known, a love born from survival. There are so many parallels between this myth, which takes place in Philos, and the standard myth in Skyhaven. One of the biggest ones is the amusement park. In both myths, MC wanted to go there with Caleb. In Philos, she tells him it's the place she wants to visit because she thinks that it might bring her happiness. And the way it's described, it sounds exactly like the Skyhaven amusement park, floating among the clouds, dreamlike, beautiful. So this leads me to believe that this is not a coincidence. It's two parallels that happen separately but influence each other. And just like how in the first myth, MC begins to feel the effects of the Turing chip, the Philos version of MC starts feeling the consequences of the lab's modifications. In both cases, it's the feelings that acts as the trigger. In this myth, MC starts feeling a mental fog. Her head hurts, the crystal on her chest shifts to red, and she could sense that something is wrong. And right then, they were ambushed, surrounded. And Caleb, always choosing her before himself, throws himself into the fight to protect her. Just before charging in, he tries to heal her the only way he knows how, by synchronizing with her. But that action rooted in love, instinct, and desperation, only transfers her symptoms to him. The system degradation, the fog, the memory loss, it all starts consuming him instead. But at that time, they didn't know. They had no idea that the lab had built a failsafe, that the deeper their emotional connection, the closer their energy synced, the more one would start to break down. So they get separated in the chaos. MC starts frantically searching for him. Even though he asked her to hide in an abandoned house in Lingxi, she stumbles through wreckage, through dust and debris, with no clue where he is. But she reaches for him, in the only way she knows how, through their bond. That invisible thread that's always been there, the same connection that once let him feel her pain back in the lab, now pulls her towards him. And this is the moment we first start to see the effects of the interference control. The failsafe the lab implemented to keep them from ever getting too close. Triggered not by war, not by violence, but by their emotions, by their love for each other. So remember how at the very beginning during their first meeting, Caleb immediately calls himself MC's gege, even though they've literally never met before? There's actually a reason for that. Ever since Caleb was a kid in that lab, he's been having dreams about Lincoln, about a different life where he and our main character were together. In those dreams, he's peeking through the main story Caleb's life, where he has always been her gege. That's why the very first time they met, he instinctively called himself that. It wasn't random, it was because of those dreams about Lincoln, about Earth, which he describes as a little blue planet at the far ends of the universe. And that's also why they ultimately chose it as their destination for their final escape, their paradise. And there is something that really hit me differently when I rewatched this whole thing in Chinese, especially in chapter 5 and 6. In chapter 6, when they're in Lingxi and they're talking about escaping to Earth, MC says something like, "Now I understand what it feels like to have a friend." And we are given two dialogue options. There's someone who'd do anything for me, and someone I can't live without. But these dialogue options make so much more sense if you watch this chapter in Chinese. Because what MC actually says in Chinese is, "Now I understand what it feels like to have a gege." This means a lot because at first MC doesn't even understand what gege actually means. She only knows it as a word Caleb said when they first met. But over time, Caleb shows her what it means through his actions. There's a moment back in chapter 5. In English, he says, "A close friend is willing to die for you." But in Chinese, this exact line is actually, "An older brother, a gege, is someone who's willing to die for his Mei, his younger sister." Look, maybe it's just me, but those two lines hit differently in Chinese, because the meaning isn't just friendship, it's deeper. It's trust, it's protection. Caleb isn't just saying he's willing to sacrifice himself as a friend. He's saying that he sees it as his responsibility to protect her, even if it costs him everything. That's what gege means to him. And that's why the emotional weight of those choices, someone who'd do anything for me and someone who I can't live without, feels so much heavier and more powerful in the original Chinese version. And so, we've reached to the final moments. They're planning their escape to Earth, to the little blue planet they both call home. But this is the part where everything that could have gone wrong just went wrong. In these last chapters, Caleb finally tells MC about the interference modules planted inside them as a failsafe. Because of their synchronization, all the degradation symptoms have been transferred onto him, and their feelings for each other have become the very trigger, setting off these devastating effects. Being chased by the entire fleet, Caleb, always putting MC first before anything else, realizes that he's already fading away. So he makes one final decision. He leaves the aircraft to hold back their pursuers, determined to give her a chance, even if it's without him. But MC, she is never gonna let that happen because she refuses to live in a world without Caleb. He's the absolute center of her universe, just as she is for him. Nothing else matters. They only have each other because that's the only thing they know. And so she chooses a third path. Not escape, not recapture, but something else entirely. A choice made from love, hatred, desperation, defiance, and heartbreak. She'd rather embrace death itself than face a universe without him. Because in the end, if they can't live together, then they'll burn together. Alright, enough. I'm done with this. In fault, you've made all of us cry. Now I demand really spicy cards or extremely fluffy ones as compensation. Thank you very much. So there is a theory going around saying that this scene in Homecoming Wings is actually just themselves watching their parallel self die. Well, if that is true, then that's messed up. Beautiful, but just really messed up. And as somebody who enjoys pain, I'm also going to believe that this is true because I do want to highlight something MC says while they're on that ship. She talks about how she wishes destruction on the people who did this to them, but then she hesitates. She doesn't even know who she's directing that rage to. She says, is it the researchers who modified us, the creators who gave us this energy, or is it fate itself that's binding us in each other's shadows? That line really stuck with me. It immediately reminded me of the video I made a few weeks back about Mr. Love, Queen's Choice. How in the end, they realized the real enemy wasn't some villain or organization. It wasn't the researchers or the experiments. It was fate itself, the entire structure of their world, a loop they could not escape, one that always ends in destruction. And I think this is the first time Love and Deepspace is really nudging us in that same direction. I don't think I've ever heard MC outright question fate like that before. Not like this. Back when I made that MLQC video, I was just speculating that maybe Love and Deepspace was heading down a similar path. But now after this myth, I'm willing to bet on it. This isn't just about people or experiments, it's about something bigger, something written into the fabric of their existence. Also, another thing I want to point out, it's really interesting how this version of Caleb is having dreams about Earth, about the main timeline Caleb. It's kind of like how Dawnbreaker Zane dreams across timelines too. As far as I know, none of the other love interests have shown signs of dreaming across timelines. It's just these two, which kind of feels intentional. And just to leave you with a final thought, if you've only experienced Caleb's story and myths in English and you happen to know even a little bit of Chinese, I really recommend rewatching all of his stories in the original language. Sometimes things get lost in translation, not because the English version is bad, it's really not, that's not what I'm saying, but because the cultural context just hit differently. And for a character like Caleb, whose identity is so tied to how he sees himself in relation to MC, the difference really matters. Cultural context matters. It's one of those things that doesn't fully translate, and that's okay, but if you're curious and if you're able to, it's really worth experiencing. So, that's it. That's the end of this video. I really hope you enjoyed this. Please leave a like if you want, and subscribe if you enjoy my content. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!